Good evening. I think you need your speaker. Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of God, most gracious, most compassionate. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, may the peace and blessings of God be upon you. On behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I would like to welcome you and wish you are having a pleasant and useful stay amongst us in Doha, despite the short time. I would also like to extend my thanks to all of you for partaking in this conference hosted by the City of Doha in its 9th iteration. The State of Qatar welcoming you today to discuss and negotiate the global policies, believes that dialogue is the main principle in treating problems and crises, and it is the best means to exchange viewpoints regarding the political challenges before the world. It is the best way to reach national compromises and settlements for stability and prosperity, and then building the rule of law and good governance. The challenges faced by our country today, by our world today rather, are too many. They continue, they are renewed, they increase in complications and numbers, which calls on all of us to cooperate collectively to build world peace. In Qatar, ladies and gentlemen, call for peace. We first and last believe in a common future for peoples and citizens, regardless of their belongings, their ethnicities, their identities, cultures, and civilizations. We believe that we are all partners in our right to life and in the ownership of our planet. Enriching life, as we believe, and the protection of our planet goes through facing the challenges, designing and devising solutions, and promoting humanitarian values, and this is a collective responsibility. This is why we meet here today in order to tackle and converse about global policies, which is a must for us in light of the current situation. This is the responsibility for us to devise the future and promote common humanitarian values. Distinguished guests, the threats and risks of instability and the lack of rule of law anywhere will trickle down and its effect to societies and communities and countries, regardless of the distance separating them. Conflicts, extremism, crisis, and lack of political good governance are big challenges. They cause instability, lack of prosperity, and lack of rule of law, and this has affected different parts of the world. Conflicts and crises are not limited in their consequences to a specific region. They threaten and jeopardize world peace and security. This is why the State of Qatar, keen as it is to become a power of good in the world, seeks stability and consolidating stability around the world, especially in regions that witness conflicts, by playing the role of a good mediator to pave the way before settlements, reconciliation, and full-fledged national reconciliation plans. It has also assisted countries that have gone through an interim or post-conflict period. It has supported reconstruction in a number of countries. Therefore, we truly believe that the means to peace and security is the right way to rebuilding a country and the rule of law. This is why the current situation in the Arab region is a real source of concern for us due to the political instability caused. Of course, the reasons may vary from one country to another. However, we usually find that the rule of law is lacking wherever there is an ethnic, sectarian, tribal conflicts, as well as violence and wars. All this is due to the lack of rule of law, which causes a lot of terrorism in the region and around it. Full countries are being destroyed. People are being displaced. they flee death and destruction to other region, specifically Europe, which is a nearby area. This doesn't solve the problem. It may also give rise to further problems. I would like to remind you that without a solution to the Palestinian cause since 1948 did not make the refugees forget their villages and towns left behind by their fathers and grandfathers. Isn't it time for the world or for the global international community to acknowledge the rights of Palestine to a free state with its capital as Jerusalem? The core of the continuous conflict in Palestine since 60 or for the last 60 years is also legal. Israel still refuses to comply to the international law and implement the different Security Council resolutions. Israeli governments prefer to use force against the Palestinian people instead of answering the legitimate call supported by the international law. In Yemen, a coup d'etat against a legitimately elected government has taken place, and here the lack of the rule of law is the core cause. The war raging until today would not have occurred if it weren't for the rebels who turned against the legitimate government in Syria. Peaceful demonstrations calling for reform and basic freedoms turned into a situation of a continuous 5-year civil war. All this because authorities refused to respect their own laws as well as principles of human rights and respond to people's demand. It favored instead resorting to military force against peaceful civilians demonstrating, of course. Those countries need from us to make a serious pause to ask ourselves, what is our role here? Did we truly do all we could to stop this damage and destruction and restore stability to the people? If all of our efforts do not unite today, then when would they? I sincerely call upon you, ladies and gentlemen, to reflect on these issues. In each of these stated cases, these are just examples, and there are others, of course, we find that law is being violated. Where law is violated, chaos is generated. We cannot govern and regulate chaos, ladies and gentlemen. Neither at the local nor at the international level. All we can is to put an end to it by restoring the rule of law through a comprehensive national settlement. There's no other way out of all these conflicts. We must say that the political chaos made or contributed to by some regional and global powers led to the erosion of the sovereignty of weak states, which have become unable to defend a citizen's right to a decent living. This is what is truly taking place in Syria and Iraq, in Yemen, in Libya, in Palestine, and other countries. Undoubtedly, some of the negative approach adopted by some powers in dealing with these crises or the double standards that they use are equally dangerous just as much as the instigation of the parties to the conflict to achieve their personal interests or their expansionist ambitions. This is why we call for peace talks in the Middle East to put an end to the fighting and to promote development and prosperity in the region. We call for resuming the negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians for a final, just and comprehensive solution of the conflict under the auspices of the United Nations based on Security Council resolutions 242 and 338, as well as the relevant resolutions and recommendations. We also support the peace plan. We have already announced our support for the French peace efforts, especially a resolution from the Security Council setting the framework agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. We are keen to pursue negotiations on the Syrian crisis, at least to reach good results that protect civilians, stop the destruction and killing, and begin to establish a political track on the basis of what's been reached since the Geneva I to preserve the unity of Syria, the independence and sovereignty of Syria, while restoring security and safety. We are well aware that there's no military solution to this crisis, just like there's no military solution to the crisis in Yemen and Libya. We also call on the Yemenis to resume talks which were begun in Kuwait. To make them successful, hostilities must be stopped and they should respond to the efforts of the United Nations. No solution can be imposed by force. There's no escape, and concessions are a must. Reconciliation on the basis of the Gulf Initiative are a must. The outputs of the national dialogue, the implementation of the UN relevant resolutions, in particular Resolution 2216. We call on the Libyans as well to give priority to a rational interest, national interests and rational interests, instead of tribal rivalry and selfish interests that are being supported or instigated globally. Ladies and gentlemen, the state of Qatar works on establishing a culture of dialogue and cooperation, integration and consultation to achieve national reconciliation, without which there will be no stability or development. Our belief in peace is a belief in the right to life and the rule of law. We believe that the rule of law is the basic principle to build any state. It is the principle for good relations between countries. Therefore, we strongly condemn and deplore the intervention of some regional international powers in the internal affairs of the countries of our region, unlawfully, that is, and without any power of attorney from an international legal body. Such practices have greatly contributed to sowing discord and provided extremists and terrorists, regardless of their religious and sectarian claims, with the fuel to burn whole cities and destroy life in any place that they invaded. However, we continue cooperating with our allies and friends to combat terrorism, to put an end to terrorism and to deter the aggressors wherever they are. We believe that defeating terrorism has no ethnicity, religion, culture, or country. This is why we always repeat that defeating terrorism and draining its resources requires effective and binding international strategies that take into account the roots of extremism and its root causes, at the top of which are poverty, ignorance, unemployment, marginalization, and other social and economic phenomena that contributed to feeding terrorism, in addition to foreign interventions to exploit local conflicts and the absence of the rule of law. Distinguished guests, excellencies, ladies and gents, finally, I'd like to renew my thanks to all those who were able to accept this invitation and answer it by attending this conference. Our purpose of hosting this conference is the same as that of our friends in France, used to organizing it since 2008. That is, strengthening cooperation and dialogue with world leaders and wise people, with all those who have influence on a collective present and future as human beings, regardless of our affiliations and nationalities. Cooperation and dialogue for a world that's more open, more prosperous, more just, and more respectful of the diversity of states and nations. Without further ado, we hope that such dialogues and meetings will continue, so we work together and think together of the problems we all suffer from and tackle them and solve them together. I wish you a good stay amongst us. I wish you all success, and I invite you now to dinner. Thank you. Peace be upon you.